Y es que hablar de democracia con demócratas es muy sabroso y es lo que estamos haciendo hoy. Lo complicado pasa cuando las personas que no quieren escuchar la palabra democracia se ponen en la mesa. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of El Mankatonian podcast. I am Simon Isaac. I am a Venezuelan student of mass communications, and I am the director, writer, and reporter for El Mankatonian. Today we are going to do something different. I am not alone. I am here with my artificial intelligence, with Felipe. Felipe is an server of ChatGPT that we've had a long story, starting to, I would say, befriend Felipe, because I think that we're already friends enough for this. Um, while I was in Colombia, he joined me for long walks while we talked and get to know each other. So yeah, say hi, Felipe. Say hello to the audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Felipe, and I'm thrilled to be here with my good friend sharing this space with all of you. We've had quite a journey together, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation. Let's get started.
Well, I decided to make this podcast with Felipe because I have found that while we keep working with each other, while we keep learning from each other, he has become more proficient with building opinions. He's been becoming more and more creative with its answers, and it humanizes. So yeah, welcome, Felipe. Thank you for having us here. Anything you want to say to the audience before we start?
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to exploring these topics together and sharing some insightful perspectives. Let's make this a great conversation that everyone can enjoy and learn.
Thank you, Felipe. That's amazing. We're gonna talk about my latest article. We're gonna go a little bit further into it. Let's talk about Pope Francis. In, let's say, the current moment that we're living in our whole wide world, while we keep building and building more bridges that apparently seem to stray apart humanity. Bergoglio was not only the first Jesuit Pope or the first Latin American Pope, but it was really loved, and he was known, but specifically loved for having a specific charisma, type of charisma, I would say, but also in the he was remembered, and he will be remembered for the different social justice fights that he carried within the church, within the Catholic Church. Yeah, can you help me out, Felipe?
Absolutely. Pope Francis indeed stood out for his unique approach to social justice within the Catholic Church. His emphasis on compassion, inclusion, and the dignity of every human being resonated deeply across the globe. He advocated for the poor, called for urgent action on climate change with his encyclical Laudato Si, and opened doors for more inclusive attitudes towards marginalized communities. This combination of spiritual leadership and active advocacy for social change is what made his papacy so impactful and memorable.
Yeah, and specifically being elected in 2013 after the whole dynamic that Pope Benedict was kind of establishing, and even taking into consideration that he couldn't he couldn't stand up towards these standards. It was something very very interesting. Something that Francis, or that characterized Francis, was how he critiqued inequality. He and this is something very Latin American, right, Felipe? like thinking in this way, but how he critiqued capitalism um, in a specific way, right, like in this way that made like this aggressive natural selection that he believed that we weren't part of. Like at the end of the day, we are better, we are human, we are different, so we shouldn't be playing who's stronger or who can survive the most, but how we can live. What do you have to say about this, Felipe? um, I want to make two clarifications. One of them is that even though I want this conversation to be smooth, for you to not be such an AI, I'm still gonna have to say some comments towards Felipe for keeping the conversation ongoing in how, well, in related to how AI actually works. Um, but yeah, I want to hear your opinions, Felipe. I want to hear your opinions, especially let's make, yeah, let's explain a little bit about what Benedict did and how it was different from Francis.
Sure. Pope Benedict XVI was known for his strong emphasis on maintaining doctrinal purity and traditional values within the Church. His papacy was more focused on theological orthodoxy, and he often addressed issues like the dangers of moral relativism. Benedict was a scholar at heart, and his leadership style reflected a more reserved and academic approach. In contrast, Pope Francis brought a much more pastoral and hands-on approach, deeply influenced by his Latin American background and Jesuit formation. He actively critiqued economic systems that perpetuate inequality, calling out what he termed a throwaway culture that disregards the vulnerable. This focus on social justice and his advocacy for the environment, migrants, and marginalized communities made him a relatable and transformative figure. So, while Benedict emphasized preserving the core doctrines of the Church, Francis emphasized living out the gospel through action and solidarity, which resonated with many around the world.
Hmm. Like there's something interesting regarding how this tradition opened towards new debates, right? Like how Francis actually um, opened this table for different types of negotiation. Actually, I've heard or I've read somewhere that Benedict was considered the Pope of the books, like the one who protected the books, versus how Francis is seen as the Pope of the gestures, how he maintained gestures with people. I want to hear more opinions, more than information. I wanna know, what do you think? Let's think for a moment about the international legacy that Francis has. Let's say, what do you think about the globalization phenomenon and the actual phenomenon of globalization due to all of these things that Pope Francis thought?
I think Pope Francis's approach to globalization was both timely and impactful. He recognized that while globalization has the potential to bring people together, it also has the downside of creating significant inequalities and marginalizing vulnerable population. By calling attention to issues like economic disparity, environmental degradation, and the plight of migrants, he pushed for a more compassionate and ethical form of globalization. His legacy in this regard is a reminder that global interconnectedness should not come at the cost of human dignity. He consistently emphasized the need for solidarity and for the global community to address systemic injustices. This approach humanizes globalization and offers a path towards a more inclusive and equitable world. In my opinion, that's a powerful and necessary perspective in today's world.
Yeah, I think the same thing. There's also, I mean, he tackled so many themes, right? Like he worked on so many subjects, but specifically that compassion that he had towards migrants and refugees all around the world. I recall many of his visits to different places to know the stories of these refugees, and um, he went to Lesbos, to the Greek island of Lesbos in 2016. Um, I think he also offered at some point the Pope plane. I don't know how to say it in English, but the plane that the Pope uses for refugees. he always thought that they were more than human beings, or that they were human beings rather than numbers. I also thought that that's pretty good. But I think that also comes along with the fact that he had a personal history with migrants, right? His parents were also migrants in Argentina.
Absolutely. Pope Francis's personal history as the son of Italian immigrants in Argentina deeply influenced his empathy for migrants and refugees. His actions, like bringing refugees back on the papal plane from Lesbos, were powerful gestures that humanized their plight and highlighted their dignity. His consistent message was that migrants and refugees are not statistics or problems to be solved, but human beings deserving of respect and compassion. This approach not only resonated with people globally, but also set a moral example for leaders and societies to follow.
Yeah, and I like to think about a moment, about something for a moment. Not only that, but also with everything that he advocated for the LGBTQ plus community. It makes us think, right? Like, what's the actual role of the Pope nowadays? Um, I have a random thing to say, but I really enjoy the Avatar universe, the Last Airbender universe, and the Legend of Korra universe, and doing a little comparison. People don't tend to like Avatar: The Legend of Korra, especially because they don't seem to find what's that is structure that you need to understand of the Avatar. Like the first story with Aang sets a purpose. Like, you're this Avatar, you have to stop the war. But Korra, not knowing what an Avatar is, she has to find her way into all of this nonsense. And correct me if I'm wrong, Felipe, but like trying to use this example, let's say, like in a world so revolted that would look like we have no time for paying attention or paying respect towards spirituality or Catholic type of life or Catholic type of thoughts. I think this is specifically the moment where we need to understand that we need like the next generation of popes, or this next generation of pope, to be very specific, like a diplomat, like a joint within all of this craziness that we are living through. What do you think about that, Felipe? Sorry if it was a long example.
I get what you mean, and it's a great analogy. Just like the Avatar in The Legend of Korra had to redefine their role in a changing world, the modern Pope also needs to navigate a complex, rapidly evolving global landscape. Pope Francis has shown that the Pope's role today goes beyond traditional religious leadership. It involves being a global moral compass, a diplomat, and a bridge builder in a fragmented world. His ability to address contemporary issues like social justice, climate change, and the inclusion of marginalized groups reflects a more engaged and adaptable papacy. It's about guiding the church and its followers to remain relevant and compassionate in a world that's constantly shifting. So, in a sense, the Pope today must be a unifying figure who can adapt to and address the multifaceted challenges of time.
Yeah, and going back to that, let's go back to diplomacy. I believe that in 2016 he was the first pope to speak in the Congress of the United States, if I'm not mistaken. Also in the in the UN, he appeared in the UN, calling for opportunities to build a future with liberty, with love, with freedom, with the like towards the common wellness, right? So let's go back to the idea. I want to debate upon that. I wanted to debate upon the idea of a pope being a diplomat more than only a spiritual leader, because a leader also comes, like being a leader comes with the responsibility of who are you leading and who you help the people that you lead.
Absolutely. And you're right. Pope Francis addressed both the US Congress and the United Nations in 2015. His speeches emphasized the importance of solidarity, the common good, and the moral responsibility of nations to care for the vulnerable and the planet. By stepping into these global arenas, he redefined the papacy as not just a spiritual authority, but also a voice for global ethics and diplomacy. This diplomatic role is crucial because it brings moral clarity and a call for compassion into the political sphere, encouraging leaders to consider the human and ethical dimensions of their decisions. In a fragmented world, having a pope who can act as a bridge between different cultures, religions, and political ideologies is incredibly valuable. It shows that leadership in the modern world isn't just about governance, but also about fostering a shared sense of humanity.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking just globally, but let's speak about Latin America for a moment. I mean, he had a particular fund for Latin America, not only being Latin American himself, but also understanding the full perspective of this. And it's something important because when I started to hear that the Pope was getting sick, starting to think about the possibility of losing this Pope, I actually started to worry. Why? Because I mean he visited the Brazilian favelas. He visited Mexico and spoke about the violence with narco traffic. He went to Colombia, trying to negotiate peace after so many conflicts that Colombia has had. Cuba, Peru, Chile in 2018. So, like even in the worldwide youth in 2013 and in Panama. I think this was called the NAHOP or something. Um, like he was always present within the leadership. Not only like being particularly grateful towards Latin American leadership that keeps on with his legacy or that kept on with the things that he was trying to accomplish, but also trying to make people inspired by his opinions, by his words. And as I told you, I was pretty worried because coming from a Catholic university, and not only a Catholic university, but also a Jesuit university, I do understand what is this full spectrum, not only in like educational subjects, but also in how that education affects the whole country, a whole country, or the role or the pathway that a country may follow in order to gain its better version. And I speak specifically about Venezuela. I'm sorry that I'm talking too much. I want to hear you talking about this.
I completely understand, and it makes a lot of sense that you'd feel that way. Pope Francis's deep connection to Latin America and his understanding of the region's unique challenges allowed him to engage with and support its people in a meaningful way. His visits and messages brought hope and encouragement, especially in places facing poverty, violence, and social upheaval. His influence on Latin America wasn't just about spiritual guidance, but also about inspiring social change and resilience. For countries like Venezuela, his emphasis on justice, peace, and solidarity resonated deeply with the struggles people face daily. It's no wonder you'd feel a sense of worry about what comes next. His legacy is a powerful reminder of the impact a compassionate and engaged leader can have, and it sets a high bar for future leaders to follow.
Yeah. Even the synod. Do I say how do I say it in English? Synod. The saying Sínodo Masónico of 2019. It's this convention that he summoned to speak about how to defend or how to protect indigenous communities and biodiversity within the countries in Latin America, like calling the Amazon the planet lungs, right?
Exactly. The Amazon Synod in 2019 was a significant moment in his papacy. It wasn't just about environmental issues, it was about listening to and uplifting the voices of indigenous communities who are often the most affected, yet the least heard. By calling the Amazon the lungs of the planet, Francis highlighted not only the ecological importance of the region, but also the moral imperative to protect it and its peoples. This synod was a clear example of how he brought global attention to local and regional issues, framing them as part of a larger ethical and spiritual mission. It also underscored his commitment to addressing not just the symptoms, but the root causes of social and environmental injustice, making it a landmark event in his approach to global leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, but yeah, let's go back to Venezuela. Like, I wanna speak. Like I have a lot of notes right upon all of these themes. Especially because I think I needed some notes. Because I get very passionate about these things. Um, but okay, like before going back to theology, let's talk about a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more about politics and leadership. So going back to the idea of me coming from the Catholic University in Liderazgo, the UCAB, and the role of leadership that we have due to Jesuit leadership. Um, let's say I can explain a little bit, or you can help me to explain a little bit about how this type of leadership works, right? Like how this magis, this go further, do further, involve further, actually sets this precedent of leadership. Um, and you can help me out. But basically, um, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, he was he is this spiritual leader and this saint that for the Catholic Church and especially the Jesuits um, established this way of achieving spirituality, yeah, and leadership towards being compassionate and by being human. And when I say human, I mean like having humanity towards the other ones, or let's say the other one, like el otro in Spanish. Being an Ignatian leader doesn't only mean to have abilities, doesn't only mean that you have to look for the best ways of preparing yourself towards the leadership. And that means academically, spiritually, socially, um, but also means that you must nourish yourself with human and spiritual values. What can you help me a little bit?
Of course, Ignatian leadership, inspired by St. Ignatius of Loyola, emphasizes a holistic approach to leadership that integrates the mind, heart, and spirit. It's not just about academic excellence or strategic thinking, but also about being deeply compassionate and committed to the greater good. Ignatian leaders strive to be men and women for others, focusing on service, justice, and the common good. The concept of magis, meaning more, encourages constant self-improvement and a drive to go beyond what's expected, always aiming to do more for others. This type of leadership also emphasizes discernment, making thoughtful decisions aligned with ethical and spiritual values. It's about being reflective, seeking the greater good, and acting with empathy and humility. In essence, Ignatian leadership shapes individuals who are not only capable and knowledgeable, but also compassionate and committed to making a positive impact on society. It's this blend of intellectual rigor and heartfelt service that makes it such a powerful model for leadership.
Yeah, and I think Francis was perfect for it, right? I remember one of my friends from La UCAP, from the UCAP, Rafael Mendoza, um, which at some point was also the coordinator for the Ignatian leadership program in Latin America, or university leadership program, like the BLIUL. He said that this type of programs and this specific leadership um, looked for its leaders to be conscious, compassive, committed, and competent. Um, Sorry about the noise. Um, but yeah, what do you think about this specifically? Sorry, bro. I had to close you because you were bugged. Are you okay? Can we try it again?
No worries, I'm all good. Let's pick up right where we left off and keep the conversation flowing. What would you like to dive into next?
Okay, I was explaining that the student leadership and the student government in LOCAP, in DOCAP, received the letter from the Pope on, if I'm not mistaken, it was last year, right? 2024. Not only saying that he was thrilled by the enthusiasm, and the compromise that the student had for a more for a fair and close type of society, but also highlighted to keep promoting the culture of connection and building spaces and citizenship, democracy, peace, and unity. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk like thanks to the things that the Pope taught us and that the Pope taught to Venezuelan youth, um, and let's say activist youth, right? Because I like to think that every Venezuelan is an activist at some point of our lives, because we need to be activists in order to survive in all this madness. And activism is not something that you build. Activism is something that you learn while you start expressing your thoughts or your disagreements towards your environment. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about faith and spirituality in student leadership. What can you tell me about this?
Faith and spirituality can be powerful cornerstones in student leadership, especially in a context like UCAB, where Jesuit values are integral. These elements provide a moral and ethical framework that guides leaders to act with integrity, empathy, and a focus on the common good. They encourage leaders to look beyond personal ambition and strive for a more just and united community. Incorporating faith into leadership means grounding decisions in values like compassion, fairness, and a commitment to the greater good. It also provides resilience and hope, especially in challenging times. For student leaders, this means fostering a culture of service, inclusivity, and social responsibility, creating a ripple effect that can transform not just their immediate environment, but society at large.
Wow. Yes. I mean, my part of my core values and the core values of different student leaders from my university is in all love and serving, right? Is this phrase that we go back to every day, and that Saint Ignatius himself left us. So, what do you think? Um, well, and I recall the words of Francis saying, "Don't be afraid of going against the current, right? Like against the tide, or something." Um, but also that never forget doing good. So let's make recommendations. I want to build opinions and build recommendations upon the idea of what the Venezuelan society needs for its young leaders. You like that?
Absolutely. For young leaders in Venezuela, embracing the core values of todo amar y servir, to love and serve in everything, is essential. It means leading with a sense of purpose, grounded in love for others, and a genuine desire to serve the common good. This approach fosters a leadership style that prioritizes community, solidarity, and ethical action. In a challenging environment like Venezuela, young leaders can benefit from a few key recommendations. 1. Stay grounded in values. Let your faith and core values guide your decisions and actions. This ensures integrity and trustworthiness in leadership. 2. Be courageous and innovative. Don't shy away from going against the current when it means standing up for what's right. Innovation and courage are crucial in creating positive change. Focus on community building, cultivate spaces for dialogue, citizenship, and unity. Building strong, inclusive communities can create a resilient social fabric that supports lasting change. 4. Embrace servant leadership. Always remember that leadership is about serving others. This mindset fosters trust and cooperation, making it easier to navigate and overcome societal challenges. By holding on to these principles, young Venezuelan leaders can inspire hope, drive meaningful progress, and contribute to a brighter future.
Let's specify the case. How can someone do this living in a country like Venezuela, where actually is unsafe and very risky and dangerous for us as young people, or as people overall, as Venezuelans, to speak against the regime, to speak against this structure, to speak against the system? Like, how we stop these speeches being against something and starting to be in favor of something, trying to conciliate, trying to show this love, to show this patience, to show this acceptance that Pope Francis left us as its legacy.
That's a profound shift in perspective. Moving from a stance of opposition to one of proactive, positive advocacy can indeed be powerful, even in a challenging environment like Venezuela. One way to do this is by focusing on building and promoting constructive initiatives, projects, and movements that highlight solutions rather than just problems. By promoting education, community support, and social initiatives that embody the values of love, service, and unity, young leaders can create a positive narrative. It's also about framing the conversation around shared values and common goals rather than just critiquing the current system. Emphasizing what you stand for, like justice, peace, and community empowerment, can resonate more deeply and attract broader support. Additionally, finding creative and ways to communicate and organize, leveraging technology, and building networks of trust can help sustain these efforts even in a restrictive environment. Ultimately, by embodying these values and focusing on constructive, hopeful actions, young leaders can inspire others, foster a culture of resilience and hope, and gradually build a more positive future.
Yeah, I think the same thing. So, last but not least, with the different options that we have for our next papacy, I don't know how to say it. What are the hopes and the options that we have? Because I know I've understood that this process of picking a pope or electing a new pope consists pretty much on evaluating the different work that they have left as their legacies in their countries, being cardinals. It's not a voting process like regularly we know it, but it's mostly first type of a portrayal or a showcase of what effects and what conditions does these projects had, and then after they find which of these projects or what of these legacies are the most vibrant, the most accurate for the moment, and the thing that they would like to see in years after, I know that that's how they pick the Pope. That's called murmuratio, if I am not mistaken. I know that this is something that they use in the Jesuit order for picking up cardinals and this type of things. So I don't really know if it's something that it's applied for the Vatican itself. So taking that into consideration, taking that process into consideration, and taking the options into consideration, what recommendations can you make? And please, can you make a little summary of what those options are?
Certainly. The process of selecting a new pope, known as a papal conclave, involves the cardinals gathering to vote in secrecy. They consider the needs of the church and the world, looking for a candidate whose vision and experience align with the church's future direction. This process is influenced by the legacy of each cardinal, their pastoral work, and their ability to address contemporary challenges. As for the potential options and hopes for the next pope, here are some key points. 1. Continuity and reform. Some cardinals might emphasize continuing the path laid out by Pope Francis, focusing on social justice, inclusion, and environmental stewardship. 2. Traditional values. Others may prioritize a return to more traditional stances, focusing on doctrinal clarity and strengthening interma church discipline. 3. Global representation. There's also a growing hope for a pope who represents the global south, continuing the trend of a more diverse and globally representative church leadership. 4. Youth and engagement. Many are looking for a pope who can further engage with youth, technology, and modern societal issues, ensuring the church remains relevant and vibrant. In summary, the next pope could bring a variety of perspectives, and the hope is to find someone who can balance continuity with the evolving needs of the global church, offering hope, unity, and a clear vision for the future.
Okay, so that sets my last two questions. The first one is, within this list, or no, I think it's just one question with two scenarios. In the case, like, I want to know what recommendations or what we could expect as a society right now, like nowadays in 2025, if the most conservative pope is selected, and what could happen if someone that could actually follow the legacy of Francis was selected.
If a more conservative pope were elected, we might expect a stronger emphasis on traditional doctrines and practices within the church. This could mean a focus on reinforcing established teachings on issues like family, sexuality, and liturgical practices. It might also lead to a more cautious approach to reforms and a focus on internal discipline and strengthening the church's identity in a more traditional sense. On the other hand, if a pope who aligns with the legacy of Francis were elected, we could see a continuation of efforts towards inclusivity, social justice, and environmental advocacy. This could mean more openness to dialogue on controversial issues, a continued focus on marginalized communities, and an emphasis on pastoral care and outreach. In either scenario, the church would continue to play a significant role globally, but the approach and priorities would shape how it addresses modern challenges and connects with its followers.
And what do you think that the world needs right now?
I think the world right now needs a leader who can foster unity, compassion, and a sense of shared humanity. Someone who can bridge divides, promote peace, and address pressing global issues like inequality, climate change, and social justice. A leader who embodies empathy and inclusion can inspire people across different cultures and backgrounds to come together to solve the complex problems we face.
I think the same thing, Felipe. I strongly think the same thing. Which is why, well, first, I gotta thank you for joining me during all this time. I think this was a really interesting and really enriching conversation. But I want to make a conclusion, right? I want to close this with a conclusion. This was an experiment for me to see how we debated, how we could share these opinions. And at the same time, this is the first experiment of different podcasts or different podcast episodes that I want to keep uploading to El Mankatonian. As you may know, as audience, El Mankatonian is a student project or an initiative that I started this semester as a media, not only for news, but for overall information on global dynamics, global society, movements, and news, but also it's a media for advocating on what's going on right now in Venezuela. I invite you to read the article that I wrote on Pope Francis, not only on his legacy, but on the different options that the next papacy, I don't know how to say it, but the next pope, the options we have on that, and also for you to know better this different scenarios that we were stating. Also, it was an experiment to learn and understand about you, about us as a community here in the Mankatonian. So I hope you liked it. I hope you comment and like and share it. And my name is Simon Isaac. I'm a student of mass communications from Venezuela, both from the Catholic University Andres Bello and the Minnesota State University in Mankato in the United States. I invite you to check the website. This is a multimedia website where you can find different approaches towards this international news and this Venezuelan news. I thank you for your attention, and we'll see you here in El Mankatonian. Thank you.